And even after that, I've seen moments in my life where I'm like, oh, I'm starting to depend on myself again. And it just doesn't work. Like, we can't live. You end up getting tired. You end up just realizing that you can't do it. And so I just always have to come back to that realization that I can't do this. And like, why am I trying on my own strength? Because it doesn't lead anywhere good.
Welcome to this week's episode of the His Hill Podcast. My name is Kelly Daugherty, and I'm your host. Have a special treat for us today. This is not what I planned, but it is obviously what God has planned. We had another guest scheduled for today, and last night I got a text telling me that they were not going to be able to make it. So I'm sitting in chapel this morning, and I'm just praying, just asking the Lord, who should I ask? And there was, I thought a couple of options there. I was looking around the room and all of a sudden had to leave the chapel to go with a couple of staff guys to check out the gym for looking it over for Thanksgiving conference. We walk in and we see somebody standing in the gym, but the lights are off, so we don't recognize anybody. Then a second person comes out, and the three of us staff guys are, we're trying to be polite, but we don't know who this is yet. And then finally we get close enough to where the light changes, and all of a sudden we have an alumni here with her mother, and wow, and then as we're talking, the Lord just made it clear in my heart that I needed to ask this alumni if she would be willing to come on the podcast. And she said yes right away, which I'm really thankful for. We're not going to be able to use her name, though, because she is a missionary, and she has to conceal her real name and where she actually ministers for security reasons. So I will call her Talia, and she was an alumni, or she is an alumni. She was a student with us the 2009-2010 school year. So those alumni that are listening from that year, maybe you could figure out who this is, but we're not going to be able to say it in the podcast. Talia, welcome here.
Thank you. It's so great to be here.
Oh, it's exciting to have you here. I couldn't believe it. Just literally came out of the shadows.
True.
That was neat. So, Talia, tell us a little bit about your life. Let's go back to where you grew up and the family you grew up in and what that was like.
Well, I grew up in Canada, and my family, there's big family, 7 kids, and grew up in a Christian home and learned about Jesus from a young age. I was homeschooled. Okay.
When did you become a believer?
At the age of 6. I remember my mom telling me about the gospel at the age of 6. She asked me how you can get to heaven, and I apparently said many ways. And she's like, no, there's only one way. So she explained to me. And that's when I remember praying and asking Jesus to be my savior, and then telling my younger brother later on that day that he needs to do the same thing. And so we were jumping on the bed, and I was telling him this, and he's like, oh, and then he had interest in it too. And I was like, okay, well, go tell mom because she'll help you.
So you were an evangelist right off the bat.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, my oldest daughter was the same. She would evangelize our youngest by telling her, you've got to be a Christian or you go to hell.
Right.
And that got my youngest daughter's attention. So then she wanted to talk to us about it. So it's, we always laugh about that, but it's really what happened though. Mm-hmm. Okay. So growing up in Canada, became a believer at a young age. What was your life like with Christ as a child?
I didn't know a lot at the age of 6. I just knew, Jesus is my way to heaven. So I remember feeling like a peace at that time, whereas before I was afraid of the idea of death and, what's going to happen to me. Mm-hmm. Whereas from that moment, I do remember a peace. And I started reading my Bible. We went to church, but I was super shy and quiet as a child. So I wouldn't so I did evangelize to my brother, but I didn't really, I remember if a friend came and I was like, oh, we should share with her, I would be nervous. So I'd ask my mom to share with her. So anyways, I had a heart for the lost, I guess, but I was timid to tell them about it. And then when I was 12 would be the next point where something kind of big happened. I was reading about Amy Carmichael in my history book. And it was just a short little biography, but it touched my heart, and I was really inspired by her. And I thought, that's what I need to do when I'm older. And so I just felt like that's what God wanted me to do.
Okay.
And then as I continued on, like the Lord had to show me a few different things. One, like I can't just be shy and quiet and keep my faith to myself. I can't just think like one day I'll be a missionary. It needs to be like Acts 1:8 says, you start where you are and you move out from there. So I learned that I need to be involved in ministry and sharing my faith now. Like boldness doesn't just one day come. So that was something I had to learn. And then every time missionaries would come and speak at our church, I was always really inspired by them. And I'd be like, oh, I want to go do what they're doing. So I wanted to go everywhere in the world pretty much. But then it was just a process of praying and sharing my faith and growing in my faith that the Lord showed me, where to go eventually.
Okay. So would you say through your high school years then that you did share your faith?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah, I started sharing my faith with coworkers. I remember sharing my faith with different coworkers at different jobs that I would have, my siblings, and I helped with different ministries, camp ministries, church ministries, so I'd share my faith there too, and going on different short-term mission trips. Yeah. That was influential too, so yeah.
Where are some places you went?
Mexico, Haiti, Dominican Republic, Brazil.
What kind of trips were they? What was the purpose of them?
Yeah, so early on, several of them were like work mission trips. You know, you go and you do like some, skits or things that are kind of more evangelistic, but most of the time you're working, doing service projects. And then, but I did some evangelistic ones, especially in Brazil. I remember we did a lot of evangelism with that one.
How did the Lord use those in your life, those trips?
He used them. It would definitely affirmed my calling to overseas missions. Like I knew that that's what I should be doing. I didn't really know exactly what country at the time. I was praying about it. But it gave me a heart for lost people and for different places and people groups that have never heard the gospel before. Going into like remote areas shows you. It just opens your eyes to so many things. It opened my eyes. I remember the first time I went to Mexico, I was like, there's so much poverty. And I was like overwhelmed by that. And then I came home and felt super guilty that we live in such nice houses and we have everything. So reverse culture shock was a kind of a big deal at that point. And then, so just like having a heart for people in need and then having a heart for lost people and like the importance of having the word of God in your own language, because not everybody has that. Like we just are so privileged in so many ways.
We are.
Whereas other countries don't have the same privileges.
Yeah. Was there at any point in these trips that the Lord is working in your heart that he will use you, that you can trust him for the work at hand?
Well, yeah, whenever I go or whenever I went to those countries, I never felt like equipped, especially so early on, like my first missions trip, I think it was 15 or 16. So I was only just starting to come out of my shell. So I was like, they asked me, everybody took turns, on the team to do like a devotion one day. And I was like, oh my gosh, that's a big thing. So so depending on God for things like speaking in front of a group of people or like acting in front of a group of people or, like Christian dramas that you do or like going and meeting people that you don't speak their language. So a lot of those things I was like, oh, I can't do this, but God can. So, but that whole idea of Christ in you and through you that we really focused on at the Hill, that I really loved. I'm sure that I learned some of those concepts before, but didn't like really come together until I came here at the Hill.
Well, let's talk about that. How did you end up coming to the Hill?
Well, my older brother came here, and so because he came, I was also inspired to come.
Okay, and there were relatives here too.
Yep, my relatives. So I guess I don't remember like really the Hill coming here as a child, but I do have been here multiple times because of visiting relatives.
Okay, great. And so you decided to come, and you were here for the whole year. And you said that you heard, you heard the truth that Christ is your life. And was that like just a big moment for you to realize?
Yeah, I think that I still refer to this my year here as the best year of my life because that's the message I really needed to learn. I think I don't know how well I understood it before. I knew you need to depend on God and trust in God and all these things, especially like going into this mindset of I'm going to be a missionary in another country. But yeah, coming here was super eye-opening, and I remember like several times of just quiet time praying and wrestling through things, or listening to the all the different classes. I mean, it just became so clear. Like the whole Bible is about Jesus and our relationship with God, and how it's not like we can't live this Christian life, because it is. And even after that, I've seen moments in my life where I'm like, oh, I'm starting to depend on myself again. And it just doesn't work. Like we can't live. You end up getting tired. You end up just realizing that you can't do it. And so I just always have to come back to that realization that I can't do this. And like, why am I trying on my own strength? Because it doesn't lead anywhere good.
Yeah, right. So, and I'm having to discipline myself and not jump toward what you're doing right now just yet. I want to see how the Lord brought you to that, because I just right away want to start asking, because of what you said you learned here. I want to find out, well, what, but so I'll be good. You finished the year. What did you do after that?
So after that, I was hoping to go, so my childhood idea was like, oh, I'm going to go to Bible school for a year, and then I'm going to go overseas. And I didn't think about an organization. I didn't think about really anything. I was just like, oh, I'm just going to go. I'll take a TESOL certification, so I'll have some sort of excuse to get into a country and like teach English, But then I came back home, and I was so excited that I had learned about it's Christ in you and through you, and Christ is your life. And I was like, that's going to be my life now. It's going to be great. And then as soon as I get home, I don't know, being at home, you somehow just slide back into, old routines or whatever. And then you're like, the excitement wanes. And then I'm like, now what do I do? And how do I go overseas? I still wanted to go overseas, but I just didn't know what would happen. But anyways, through that, I took a year to just work and pray and see what the Lord wanted. And so it ended up that the Lord put on my heart the desire to go to university, which I never actually wanted to go. I always wanted to be a teacher, but didn't actually enjoy school and didn't want to actually go to university. But it just became clear that I should. And so I went to university and became a teacher. And it was neat because at university, the campus that I went at was small. There had never been a Christian club there, so I started one. So I was doing ministry. Yeah, it was cool. The Lord was the one who started it. I really just I had no ideas and no help, and I just knew that I should start a Christian club. So at the beginning of the year, when the different clubs set their tables, everybody's got this fancy table, and I just have a table with a sign-up sheet that says Christian Club, and I don't even think anyone actually signed up while I was physically sitting there. But when I was in class, because I had to go to class, so whenever I wasn't there, I'd come back and I'm like, there's names on here. Who put their name on that sign-up sheet that you can't even see? So anyways, it started out, we needed 10. We got 10 people to start the group, and then it jumped to 20 and then 30, and we ended up with 60. Yeah. Wow. So it was really cool. The Lord was doing it all. I was just amazed, because I was, again, kind of shy in a new place. But the Lord did a lot of cool things, and people were renewed in their faith through that, strengthened in our faith, just as growing together. And then people who thought they were saved, but they weren't really, came to know the Lord. And
who were a part of the club?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and got connected with church, and they're doing so well now. It's amazing.
Praise God.
Mm-hmm. And just different opportunities we shared our faith with other people. Sometimes we just go up to random people and talk about God. And so we were doing, the Lord was really good, and it was a really neat experience. So clearly the Lord wanted me to go there, even not just for the degree, but also for the people He wanted me to invest in.
That's a great reminder, because when we so often, and I know this was my battle too, and still is, that when you come to realize that Christ is your life, you're so excited about that. It's such a relief. Major used to tell us the pressure's off, and that's exactly what it feels like. The pressure's off. This is His life, but the thing is, then we have to learn that it's His life, His way.
Yeah.
And we always think, okay, Jesus, this is wonderful. You're going to be my life, and I trust you to live your life in me this way. And we have all these expectations, and He is so patient, to work in our hearts, to continue to prompt, to continue to speak, and to show us what He has for us. And then that's the thing that we really, that's the thing that I have to constantly come back to, that I need to trust Him for what He's doing, for the doors that He opens, for the people He brings into my path. And I didn't expect to leave staff. After being here for 23 years, I loved this, and I thought, this is it. I'm dying here. That's what I want. But the Lord changed that, and it became obvious. And it wasn't. And you also think too, if you respond to what He's doing, then it's going to be smooth sailing. It was rough. It was 6 hard years, but never without the reality of His presence and constantly showing both my family and myself His provision for what He had. And then He did bring us back here. And it's different. We were talking about that before. It's different, but it's what He has, and I can trust Him for it.
Yeah.
And it's exciting to hear. You go to college, and it's not your plan even to be there, not your plan to start a club, but didn't even have a plan when you started it. Yep. But the Lord the Lord did, and He worked in that, and even brought people who weren't saved to that, and they come to know Jesus. What an incredible, testimony.
It's a really cool time.
Yeah, praise God for that. So you finished school.
Yep. And then I was like, okay, now I have the degree.
What kind of degree?
Concurrent education. So it was a mix. Like you have a Bachelor of Education and Bachelor of Interdisciplinary Studies. Okay.
So now you're ready to what?
So yeah, I'm like, Lord, I've done the Bible school thing. I've now done the university thing, which I wasn't planning on. So it's time to go overseas. Send me. But then it was another 3 years before I actually got sent. Romans 10 says, how can they go unless they are sent? So true.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. I was ready. I thought I was ready after, this year at Bible school. Yeah. And then the Lord sent me to university. And I'm like, now I'm definitely ready. It's been another 4 years of university. So I did 5 years and 4. So yeah, I was ready to go. And also at university is where I met, or I attended a church that had connections in South Asia. And they are the ones who sent me there twice to do a vision trip to see, is this the place? Because I had been thinking that was where I should go. So that was also a huge blessing. And clearly the Lord, put that in place too, so that I could have a connection and a way to get there. So when I was there in South Asia, I just felt I think this was the place that the Lord wants me to be. And got connected with nationals there, working with different pastors. It was a really cool experience, and learned a lot there too. And that's where I met some people from the organization that I'm with. And I was really inspired and encouraged by that. At first, I thought I was the only foreigner there. I was like, there's no other foreigners here. It's just me. But then these people showed up to our church, and I was like, oh, there's other white people here. What? So then they told me about their organization, and I just really liked their vision and strategy, because working with the national South Asians was cool, but a lot of times, I don't know, I was starting to feel like there's something missing, because all of I saw, but I didn't really know I didn't know what the solution was supposed to be, but I saw that everything is on the pastors. The pastors are doing running the church and, discipling their own people, but they're also the only ones doing evangelism. And so they're doing everything. So it's they have limits. I mean, you can't evangelize to the whole city when you're just a couple of pastors.
Right.
So I was noticing this, and they don't really have a strategy. It's kind of just whatever you feel like is what you share. And a lot of times they'd be like, okay, you can share something. And I was like, I don't know what to share. So in my heart, Lord, what should I share? But there's just, they're doing great work, and they're working so hard, but there was not, there were some pieces missing, I felt like. And so the foreigners that I met, they had such a clear vision and strategy, and they were equipping people, not just pastors, but everybody, to share the gospel and make disciples. So that really, the goal there was multiplication, and you could see that it would work, rather than just addition, one-on-one addition type of thing, where now it's you can see that multiplication is going to be really cool, because it will spread the gospel farther and cause more believers to be involved, rather than just the pastors doing all the work.
Right.
So I was I want to be involved in this. But then when I applied to go, or when I tried to start the inquiry process to go with this organization, I was kind of discouraged at the time, and they were like, oh, you're going to have to do all these things, blah, blah, blah. It was weird. The recruiter was not recruiting me. And so then I tried.
Purposefully?
I guess. I don't know. So then I tried looking into other organizations, and I was not getting anywhere, really. It was like a whole year of just kind of feeling really depressed that this isn't going anywhere. I was working at the same time teaching, but I was like, my goal was to go overseas. And I was like, Lord, why aren't you sending me? So then a year later, my pastor was like, well, why don't you just try this organization again? And I was like, judging by last time, I don't feel like it would go anywhere, but I tried, and it was a different recruiter, and he was like, great, and so encouraging. He's like, yeah, come on over. We'll get you through all the requirements. We'll send you, by next year. And I was like, okay.
Wow.
So that was it. I got into the process, and it was like a year and a bit of like going through their application process and taking some seminary courses that they required. I thought I was done with school, but I had to do more apparently. And so, and then their training process, and then I was on the field by January 2019.
Wow. There seems to be a pattern here that the Lord's taking you where He'd have you be, but you're going to have to wait on His time for it. Yeah. I couldn't help but think of Paul's statement from prison. I wonder when he came to know Christ, I wonder if he ever thought he would be a prisoner, like literally.
Yeah.
And it was actually as a prisoner in jail that he wrote the words, for me to live as Christ. Mm-hmm. And to understand that, we always think that, to be in Christ and to live His life means, and we have these big dreams. What a statement that is that we just kind of gloss over. We make a big deal about it, but we don't really make a big deal about the context that he's in when he says that. To, for whatever he has right here, for me to live as Christ.
Yeah.
And
I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me.
Yeah,
and you're like, that
same
doesn't
book.
just mean about sports.
Yes, right. Yeah. And so often that is what we hear. But that's a good point. Yeah. So what year was this then that you were accepted?
I was accepted. So 2017 must have been when I was inquiring. Yeah,
Okay.
Because I did seminary from 2017 to 2018. So that was the year that I did the seminary and the application process and all their requirements that they had. And then 2018, in the fall, I went to their training, which was like a 2-month thing. And then 2019, like January, right at the beginning of the year, I went to the field.
Okay. So you've been there since 2018.
2019 on the field.
Okay.
2018 with the company. Yeah.
Okay. Now, what can you tell us of the work that you're doing?
Well, so we have a business there, a legitimate business that like makes our presence legitimate and allowed to be there. Because for security reasons, we can't be officially what we're doing. So I work with a team, and they're mostly Americans. And so I work with them, and we run our business, but most of the time, like, we're doing what God has put on our heart, which is to do what we would call the core missionary task. And so it involves like entry into places, evangelism, discipleship, church planting, and leadership development. And then the final one is exit. So we want to see, like, our vision is to see no place left no place left for us. Like, we don't need to be there anymore because the gospel has spread and local believers are doing the work themselves.
Yeah.
So we don't know like how long we can stay there. So we want to invest in local believers and equip national believers to do this whole process themselves. So whatever we do, we take them along with us. And so it's like double, we're discipling them at the same time as evangelizing, people, or discipling other people. So we are working along with national believers, and we're going into different places in where we live or in beyond where we live to reach people with the gospel and to do follow-up. Well, I usually call it follow-up, but discipleship, Bible studies, that type of thing.
Have you seen people become believers?
Yeah. It was cool. There's lots of stories I could tell, but there's in the first year. So the first year is like devoted to language and culture study. Like, you need to learn the language. Where I live, like, not pretty much. There's very few people who know English, so I'm usually not speaking English. So the first year, yeah.
I want to ask you, what do you speak, but you can't tell us.
I probably can't tell you. But
I'll find out after.
Yeah. 2 languages I know, actually, other than English. So the first year I'm learning the language, and I'm at the point where I can share the gospel in the local language, and I can understand a decent amount of things, but not everything. So my language skills were okay, but not the greatest. So there is one time I was with a friend. We had already shared the gospel with her, and she was believing. And she was like, oh, I'll take you to my sister's house today. And I was like, okay, where does she live? So she's like maybe a half-hour drive away. So we go there, and then at her sister's house, I'm like, great, we have all these new people we can share the gospel with. And because her sister's there, the kids are there, her like relative from the village was there. And so I'm sharing the gospel with them, and like everybody is kind of distracted. Kids are running around, and I myself am getting distracted. I'm like starting the sentence and then like losing track of things. And this lady who was from the village was so interested. Everybody else is like, this person's language isn't that great. They just, for whatever reason, weren't very interested. But this lady was so interested. She kept like turning to me. We're sitting on the floor, right? She kept turning me towards her, being like, keep going. Like she wanted to hear the story. So I finished sharing the gospel with her, and she's like, what do I need to do to be saved? And I was like, I said, I had this moment of like, this is a big deal. Like she wants to be saved, and I'm telling her how to be saved. So I need to make sure I get it right. And I'm like, you just have to believe. And I feel like I should be saying more, but like, you need to believe in Jesus. And so that's what I told her. And then she's like, okay, well, like now what and all this stuff. So I happened to have a Gospel of John with me, and I was like, here, take this. Cause she was going to leave that day to go back to the village. Like, I don't know if I'll ever see her again. So I give her this. I'm like, read this. If there's a church in your area, I mean, you can go there to learn more. Get my number, stay in contact, then you can learn more. But like, you need to just believe in Jesus. So that was really cool. And that was a time where I'm like, my language wasn't even that great. So the Lord is gracious in your language learning time when you don't even have good language people. He just like sends the right people to you, and you don't even expect to meet them.
Yeah, that's interesting. We go back to your short-term trips and the things that you were learning then and then here, and then going to university and now there, that the Lord is continuing to show you that I don't need you, but I can use you. Yeah. And just all he's looking, sorry about that, all he's looking for is our availability. And what an incredible testimony to that. Yeah. And I appreciate that. Now, without saying where you're from, I know that at times it can be dangerous to be a Christian. And have you had to face any of that?
Me personally, not too much. I have a lot of national partners who have gone through different degrees of persecution. A lot of the pastors in my area have been persecuted in some way or another. So it definitely happens, and it comes in waves. And there's a close national partner of mine which I just like call them aunt and uncle. They feel like aunt and uncle to me. They started a church in their house, and they were arrested, and for no other reason other than they were accused of, converting people. So that, so I have people who are close to me that have gone through it, but not me personally. Okay. Like not anything serious anyways. Okay.
What are some things that, being on the mission field, I mean, you're away from home. Quite a bit. You're quite a distance away from home. What are the things that the Lord's had to take you through and teach you in being on the mission field?
Yeah, so many things.
As a single woman, too. Yeah.
Yeah, so there's a lot of things. When I went in, so the one thing is team. When I went into it, I was of the mind of like, I'm just going to go. Like, I didn't really think, I'm not really one to think about like safety or all these different logistical things. I'm just like, I'm going to go. It's going to be great. But I went there. And so I have other friends who are like, team is so important. Like they're praying about the team and they know their teammates, and I didn't know my teammates. I don't know. I guess I trusted the Lord. I didn't think about it. But I loved my team, and I went there and I was like, this team's amazing. But team changes so much, like, because there's people who come for certain amounts of time and then they leave, or things change and they move, and like, there's just like a ton of turnover. But I have always loved my teammates, all of them that come, and I miss them when they go. So when I got there, it was neat because I was living with two girls, and so I didn't have to sit at my house. Everything was already, so it was just like an easy transition. And we had a great community because I was living with these two other girls, teammates, and it was awesome. We had so much fun. But then about a year and a half later, almost 2 years later, I guess, both of them left. So then it was just me, and then I was all of a sudden alone. So I think ever since then, things got like harder. There would have been like hard things during that too. And then, of course, COVID happened and all this stuff. So I think loneliness and like being single is sometimes hard because you're like, everybody else is married. And in that culture, they're like always asking, when are you getting married? Why aren't you married? All this stuff. I knew going into it that like I'm single, and if the Lord wants, I'll just be single for the rest of my life. Like that's fine. In my head, I'm like, that's fine. And I still think that that's fine. But like there are still moments where I'm like, man, I wish that I could have a family, that I wouldn't just be the one, like, living alone. So sometimes loneliness is hard, and the devil knows our weaknesses, and like he really uses that too. So sometimes you go through phases of like thinking, oh, the Lord is, good to everybody else, but not good to me, or like things that I want in life. It's like, you read those verses of, ask what you will and I'll give it to you, or like delight in yourself in the Lord and he'll give you the desires of your heart. And I'm like, I think this is a good desire. I don't think I'm asking for anything like, wrong, but it's still not happening. So anyways, there's like times where that stuff happens, but the Lord is still gracious, and he has given me a really great community with the Nationals. I have really good friends and love them all, and they're encouraging. And like my team is super encouraging. So it's not that I don't have fellowship, but there's times where I like miss, my nieces and nephews are growing up not knowing me, and I come back and they're like, who's that? And so that's hard. So there's things that are hard, but the Lord is still good throughout all of it.
How often do you get to come home?
I came home more than I thought I would. So the first 2 years, I was there 2 years fully without coming home. And then I came home for what they call a quick turnaround, which I didn't think was quick, but it's like 4 months of... Essentially, there was no reason for me to be back. But, it was nice seeing family.
Sure.
So I did their quick turnaround. So that was one time, and then I came home 2 times again, basically like a year and a half later, and then another year and a half later because of different reasons. One, I had to get a visa, and so anyways. And now I'm back on home assignment. So I guess this would be my 4th time back in the last 5.5 years. So more than I thought. Okay. Because typically it's like, every 3 years type of thing.
Do you ever get visitors?
Sometimes, yes.
Okay. So it's possible then? If people want to come visit, they can?
Yes. Okay. Teams can come. That's always fun. I've had a couple of different churches send teams, and that's been really great. And I would love to see more. And my family came to visit me one time, so that was super fun.
Wow. The whole family?
Well, a decent number of them.
Okay. Half would be a lot.
Yeah, I guess 4 people is kind of half.
Good. Yeah. All right, that's neat. So, do you see this being what you'll be doing for a while? Has the Lord shown that to you, or do you think it'll be a short thing, or what?
Yeah, I see it as long term. I know that plans change all the time because, like I've said, I've seen teammates, come and go. People who think they're there long term, then they're not. Like, I know that the Lord can change the plan whenever. But in my mind, ever since I was 12 years old, I'm like, I'm going to go. I'm going to just be there till I die, or whatever. So in my mind, I'm ready to be there as long as the Lord wants. I hopefully won't be in the same place the whole time because, like I said, we want to go through all those phases and get to exit. Like, we don't want to just stay there the whole time. We'd ideally like to see the work progress in such a manner that we're not needed. Like, there would be no place there for me, so I can go somewhere else.
So the team would move somewhere else?
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm. That's interesting. Okay, so how about finances? Do you have an official business there? Does that provide your finances, or do you have to have support?
So the organization I'm with is really cool because they do all of the support raising themselves. So I don't have to do any support. So they send me and they provide for all of my financial needs. Okay. The business is a part of that, but it would be like a small part of that.
Okay. Mm-hmm. Okay. So now you were mentioning before that you encourage people not to send anything to you because it may or may not get there, and it may or may not have been looked at by many on the way. So, but how about letters?
Yeah, so that's the thing with letters too. I've had people send me, like my mom or different friends will send me a birthday card or a Christmas card sometimes. And they'll send it, I don't know, let's say a month before. But it doesn't get to me till like 2 months after, or maybe it didn't reach at all. So I just like don't trust the mailing system that well. It's either gonna not come or it comes like months later. So even a letter, I mean, you can send a letter, but it might be, I don't know how much. I feel like sending anything, even if it's a letter, is like more expensive than it should be. And it's possibly going to get there, or at least get there late.
Okay. So I'm going to ask a question with that for your classmates from here who, if they were students with you, they know who you are.
Yeah.
How would they be able to, give you encouragement, to let you know they're praying for you, they're thinking about you and want to check on it? Would email be a way?
Yeah. Email and Signal, I would say, are the greatest ways.
Okay. And do they have to be careful about what they say in these emails?
Ideally, yeah, it would be good to not use what we call the M word. So mission, missionary, that type of stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, mostly I'll just put M with an asterisk or whatever. Or, you can put things that so we know what each other's saying, but just not spelling the whole word or something, or intentional misspellings, that type of thing.
Yeah, that would be easy for me. Now, I'll tell you what, why don't you give me your email, and if somebody wants to get in touch with you, they can get in touch with me and I'll give it to them.
Awesome.
Good. All right. Well, I almost called you by your real name. But I didn't do it. If people listening, if any of this interview seems a little choppy, it's because we've had to cut some things out, and it hasn't been because of me. That's what's so funny is that Talia has made a few gaffes in giving her testimony here, and that she's had said some things that she it's better if that's not heard, not because it's bad things, but because it's for security reasons. So anyway, and I have to keep looking down to see. I have her name written down, Talia. I have to keep looking at that I don't call her by her real name. But anyway, Talia, this has been really neat. Thanks for being willing to do this at such short notice. I mean, literally, we were downstairs. And I said, "Hey, would you be on the podcast?" And immediately you said yes. I appreciate that, and
cool,
I really
that worked out.
Yeah, it is. I do see it as God's providence. It's just we lost our guest last night, and I don't thinking, well, what do we do? I walk in the gym, and there you are, and it's what a blessing it's been. Thanks for doing this and for just sharing what the Lord's done in your heart and how He's using you now.
Thank you so much for inviting me to do this.
Certainly.
It's exciting. It's exciting to be here after so many years.
Yeah, it's good to have you. What a surprise.
Yeah.
Thanks for doing this.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of the His Hill podcast, featuring our host, Kelly Doherty, and one of our students from the 2009-2010 school year, Talia. We will be heading out on our school service project this Sunday, and we'll be serving in East Texas alongside an organization called Mission NAC for the 5th year in a row. Please pray for our time there, for protection and for unity as we all get to know each other better. Thank you again for tuning in with us this week to another episode of the His Hill podcast. Remember to keep your eyes fixed on Christ, and don't forget to be encouraged. He is for you. I'm Lizzie, and we'll see you next week.